Here we are with another great video from Salem GADSDA. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button to keep track of all our new videos released. We're going to talk about the King of the North study. That's the study of Daniel 11. But we're only going to deal with one verse, and that's verse 1145. Because that is the only verse in the King of the North saga that has not been fulfilled. We don't think it's been fulfilled yet. We're seeing some things that make us think, okay, maybe it's coming pretty soon. So this video is made because there was a mistake I made in applying the King of the North's planting to Jerusalem. That is not true. Everything that we have from inspiration, we know that Jerusalem, Israel, the Holy Land, that area that has been mapped out is for the kingdom. It is for the kingdom. So let's get started. We're going to unveil Daniel chapter 1145. Now, this was written originally on August 10th, but it's August 17th now. So we'll just say that we are on day 317 of the war in Israel. So it's August 17th, and we are on day 317 of the war in Israel. No, it hasn't stopped. Yes, it is ongoing. And it is escalating. It's escalating. Iran has made a promise to enter the war against Israel after the assassination of a Hezbollah official and Israel's attack on an Iranian consulate. Yet yesterday, a speech by former President Donald Trump caught my ears and perked my attention. My kids were listening to a TikTok of Trump making claims he had done more than any other American politician for Israel. Trump said, "If anybody I know is Jewish and they would vote for Kamala over me, they should have their head examined." He continued, "I gave them Golan Heights. I gave them the capital of Israel, Jerusalem. I even built them an embassy," he said. What bothered me was not Trump's latest audacious claims. We Americans are used to our former president's brashness and communication style. My ears picked up when Trump bragged on what he had built in Israel. Now, Trump is running for president in our 2024 election coming up in November in just a few months. And he is running against Kamala Harris, the current vice president of the United States of America. As present truth believers, we have been closely looking at events and the fulfillment of Daniel 1145, because the very next thing to happen in Daniel 12:1 is our deliverance. After Daniel 1145, which says, "And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain, yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him," the very next thing that we see is Michael standing up and delivering the saints. We have specifically been looking for the moment the United States does this because of these statements. 14 track, page 89, paragraph 3. "It is self-evident that planting the tabernacles of his palace cannot mean the capital, planting his capital. The tabernacles, therefore, may denote a branch of his palace, and his choosing to plant them in the glorious holy mountain indicates that the place is intended to attach to his tabernacles the holiness of the Christian's God. Investing the tabernacles of his palace with such sanctity can mean that it is to house the headquarters of the soon coming ecclesiastical world government, which we have already considered." So we all know that Great Britain has been helped by the United States of America more than once. But if we rightly understand this verse, the events of which are but a continuation of those found in verse 44, the king will surely come to his end and none shall help him. This may transpire before World War II is entirely over, and yet it may not. We gather from this fact that the event of verse 44 is in connection with the event of verse 45. Inspiration seems to allow no time between verses 44 and 45. We do not know what turns the war will take, but we know that the prophecies of the Bible never fail. Now, if any of you guys are diligent students of the spirit of prophecy and present truth, you should know that World War II is to be resumed. World War II, which went cold, between Russia and the United States, it will go piping hot in the future, and there will be a gigantic war. But that's another study. So let's look at the time and place of the planting from a couple of other statements. Again, that was 2TG number 7, page 9, paragraph 2. It continues. As to his planting his tabernacles in the glorious holy mountain, it is not too clear, for planting the tabernacles of his palace before he comes to his end does not necessarily mean moving his throne there. It could be taken to mean having a branch of his palace there. If he is to plant his tabernacles there while Michael stands up, though, then the only locality other than the Holy Land that we know of is at Mount Sinai, between the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. Now, this statement does not say for a certainty that the branch of his palace would be on Mount Sinai. It's simply saying that the only other glorious holy mountain besides the Holy Land, would be Mount Sinai, the literal glorious holy mountain, right? One glorious holy mountain is obviously figurative, while the other is literal. We know from the study of the king of the north and the south that in this verse, a new king of the north emerges after England and World War II and is introduced with the pronoun he. We determined that this new king of the north was the United States because it emerged as a leading world power and supporter of the state of Israel. But let's talk about the two seas, between the two seas. The seas likely refer to the Mediterranean and Red Sea. Let's take a look at the possible locations. So where will the United States plant the tabernacles of his palace? We're looking at between the seas. 12 track, page 90, paragraph 1 says, but one location, perhaps Mount Sinai, is between the seas, the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. You can see it on the screen. His choosing it, that is the king of the north, instead of Jerusalem, implies that it is because Palestine, as well as Edom, Moab, and Ammon, shall escape out of his hand. The United States may plant a tabernacle in Mount Sinai because the Bible says Palestine, as well as Edom, Moab, and Ammon shall escape out of his hand. Mount Sinai is actually in Egypt. So if we see the United States put a branch of government here or a house of worship that is mixed with economic, political in the future, we can know that this is the very last act before King of the North comes to his end the first time. Keep in mind the King of the North actually falls 3 times, right? He comes to his end 3 times, and the first is in the gigantic war surrounding Israel or Jerusalem. So let's look at things that are at Mount Sinai right now. There's not much, but there is houses of worship there. Mount Sinai, also known as Jebel Musa in Egypt, has several buildings, including a monastery, a mosque, and a chapel. So let's go through the list of buildings and developments at Mount Sinai. There's St. Catherine's Monastery. Located north of the mountain, this 6th century monastery has been considered the site of Mount Sinai for many years. There's the Chapel of God in the highest. This is located at the summit of the mountain. This chapel is surrounded by the remains of the Justinian Basilica. There's also the Greek Orthodox Chapel Built in 1934 on the remains of a 16th century church, this chapel is located at the summit and encloses a rock that is believed to be the source of the biblical tablets of stone. The chapel is not open to the public. Moses' cave. Located at the summit, this cave is where Moses is said to have waited to receive the 10 Commandments. Mosque. Located at this summit, this mosque is still used by Muslims today. And there's also a chapel dedicated to St. Catherine, located atop Mount Catherine, which is 8,668 feet high. And lastly, there's the Path of Moses. This 4,000-step pathway to the summit has the remains of other chapels along the way. So we know that God's kingdom will be planted in the last days in Jerusalem. So the King of the North's tabernacles will be elsewhere. The territory that was called Palestine, but is now the state of Israel, we need to know and understand, because the prophet said that Palestine shall escape out of the King of North's hands. This is because the Lord will set up his kingdom there. So this map shows the area that was Palestine that has now been swallowed up by the settlements of the Jewish people and has been completely taken over, almost completely by the Jewish people, and has been renamed the State of Israel. Now, the prophet did not call this area Israel of note, because at that time it was still Palestine. If you look at the map that is in 1947, the country was called Palestine. Okay, it was Palestinian land. So every time you hear the prophet refer to that territory, he says Palestine. Now, if we're going literally by the territory that is Palestine, we would have to basically rule that out as a possible planting. And the reason is this. Former statements that, Palestine, it won't be in Palestine, or won't be in Jerusalem, or won't be in the Holy Land. But also, we need to understand that Ezekiel prophesies of a new division of land. That is actually where God's kingdom, the kingdom of God in Daniel 2, is going to be set up. It's a kingdom that will not be given to any other. It's God's forever kingdom. And it's going to be set up premillennial. We also have a video on that on our website and YouTube channel called Daniel 2, the Kingdom of Daniel 2. So let's read this statement from Symbolic Code, Volume 7, numbers 7 through 12, page 22. The prophet presents a division of land entirely different from that of Joshua's time. That's in Joshua 17. It is to be in strips from the east to the west. Dan is to have the first portion in the north, and Gad the last portion in the south. Between the borders of these two are to be the portions of the rest of the tribes. The city is to be in the midst of the land, and the sanctuary in the midst of the city. And to see that, it's never been fulfilled. Okay, look at Ezekiel 48 on that description. He continues, the fact that such a division of the promised land has never been made shows that it is yet future. Also, the fact that the sanctuary is to be there, whereas it is not to be in the earth made new, Revelation 21:22, positively proves that this unique setup is pre-millennial. Now, we need to unveil the territories, correct, of the kingdom and the King of the North's planting. We have to understand the difference between that, because wherever the kingdom of the kingdom of heaven is, the kingdom of Daniel 2, that God is going to set up in the last days, premillennial, the King of the North's planting cannot be. Okay, so to understand where the King of the North could plant his tabernacles, let's look at the kingdom map imposed on the Palestine map Brother Hadif was referring to. The Palestine map from the 1940s is imposed on top of the Greater Middle East map. And then I imposed the Kingdom map that shows the new division of land that was placed on top of that Palestine map. Okay. So I used the Dead Sea as a marker to line up the territories accurately. So all that area within that territory could not be the area that the King of the North plants his tabernacles. Also, something else that we need to consider. Palestine, Edom, Moab, and Ammon escape out of the King of the North's hand. Okay? So, are the ancient territories of Edom, Moab, and Ammon included in this exempt area? That's 12 track, page 90, paragraph 1. If so, there could be exceptions, meaning the planting area is not possible within those areas. And you can see I marked it out with the black borders. The area now expands from the area that we just looked at of Palestine and the new division of land in the kingdom. And now it's expanding to the east, the south, and the north slightly, enlarging the area to be exempt. Again, the glorious holy mountain is not Palestine, okay? The phrase glorious holy mountain, Answer book number 5 says, page 91, paragraph 2, cannot designate the church, for the context of the verse does not support the notion. On the contrary, clearly it shows that the King of the North is to go forth from the glorious land, Palestine, the Holy Land, and plant his tabernacles in the glorious Holy Mountain, while other scriptures show that the Lord is to return to that glorious land and plant his tabernacles in Zion, the Holy Mountain. Zechariah 1:16, Zechariah 2, verses 10 through 13, and Zechariah 8, verse 3 will show that. So since both tabernacles cannot be in the same place, and since the Lord's is to be in Jerusalem, obviously, therefore, the glorious holy mountain where the King of the North is to plant his must be elsewhere. That's the bingo statement, right? So we know it cannot be in the Palestine, and we can surmise that it probably won't be in the ancient territories of Moab, Ammon, and Edom. So what's left? We'll take a look at that in a minute. But now let's look at what the United States is doing, because we want to tie everything in with current events. Since the 1960s, the United States has expanded its presence in the Holy Land, first building the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv. Since then, U.S. relations and measures in Israel have greatly expanded, with the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. The Tel Aviv branch still remains open. These are all signs of his planting. And remember, the King of the North goes forth from the glorious land, okay? He goes forth, and then he plants. He leaves it, and he plants. So let's take a closer look at what else is being developed. Besides the U.S. Embassy moving to Jerusalem and the consulate, we also have Trump Golan Heights, okay? This is of particular note. Trump built and developed this in Israel, and in his honor, Golan Heights, which was annexed from Syria by Israel, was renamed Trump Heights. Once the branch of the tabernacle is planted, perhaps in Mount Sinai, we can know that this begins the fulfillment of the first part of Daniel 11:45, because we will be right in between, and he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain, and yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. But we will not fully understand these things until they begin to happen, or even after it happens. Okay, I want to point something out about this Trump Heights development, though. If you look at the Palestinian map, you can see the Sea of Galilee there. Now, Golan Heights is to the east of the Sea of Galilee, right? It was annexed from Syria. It doesn't include Damascus. If you look at the ancient Kingdom of Israel map, okay, you can see that this area is part of Israel. Now, we don't know, we don't know if Golan Heights or Trump Heights is included in the exempt area. These are just my thoughts on, what could be exempt, what could be part of it. So we don't know. So these are just my thoughts on what could happen to fulfill prophecy, and it's not completely certain. It may be that the future headquarters for the ecclesiastical world government may be somewhere else and not in Golan Heights or Trump Heights. Now, if they annex and start to take more of Syria and Lebanon, and it's still definitely in that area, it's still in between the two seas. We can see, if we see some development there, we can watch for it. Okay, but we just don't know. There's a strong chance it could be in Sinai. So let's read this statement, because this statement was written in 1948 and after track 14. So we can surmise that the prophet is getting more light and he's starting to add to it, and maybe his understanding is becoming a little bit clearer. It says, verse 45, and he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain, yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. The only portion of Daniel 11 yet to be fulfilled in this verse, the last of the chapter, and since these prophecies are made to be only to be understood only when they are being fulfilled or after fulfillment, verse 45 is not as clear as we would like to have it. Consequently, concerning the place of his tabernacles and his inn, also as to whether another Christian power shall inherit the title King of the North before verse 45 is fulfilled, only time itself will positively portray the whole truth. So, is there going to be another Christian power that emerges and plants the tabernacles of their palace? We don't know. He's leaving it open. But we can look at the other studies on the King of the North, and everything says this is the United States. Okay. Let's try to look at the map one more time. Another map. Okay, and I just read this. Okay. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain, yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. The only portion of Daniel 11 yet to be fulfilled is this verse, the last of the chapter. And since these prophecies are made to be understood only when they are being fulfilled or after their fulfillment, verse 45 is not as clear as we would like to have it. Consequently, concerning the place of his tabernacles and his end, also to whether another Christian power shall inherit the King of the North before verse 45 is fulfilled, only time itself will positively portray the whole truth. And we do know from other areas of the inspired writings that America took over the title King of the North from Britain. We have to rightly divide the writings. We're going to stop here, and we will learn more in this King of the North series. We will stop here, where we will learn more later in part 2 of the King of the North series. Now, if you would like to find out why America is the King of the North and not Rome, according to the spirit of prophecy, please go to our YouTube channel, type in the search bar Salem GADSDA when you go to YouTube, and look for our King of the North and South video for a detailed treatment of Daniel 11. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification button to the channel. That will make it so it alerts you every time we release a new interesting Bible study video. Our motto is we make Bible studies interesting. That's our motto at Salem GADSDA. We don't want to bore you. The Word of God is certainly not boring, and we make Bible studies interesting for the saints. Thank you, and stay tuned for more.
Truly, Daniel 11:44-45 is quite a critical study. And on 45, where it says the position is not clear where to plant the tabernacles of his palace. Now, my area of concern is about 44, where it says none shall help him. We understand the Pentecost tradition says Britain, being the 5th king of the North, was being helped by USA several times. Now, looking at the current situation in Ukraine and Russia, where America or the NATO are coming together to fight Russia. And we understand from that war, that's where they will proceed. God will gather them to battle at Jerusalem. Now, what will happen to its allies? I mean, the allies of USA, since none will help him. Have you gotten me?
Yes, you're saying that the skirmish with Russia and Ukraine could turn into the gigantic war. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Now, yes. During that war, Ukraine, Russia war, I can see America, Germany, in short, the other allies are helping Ukraine to fight Russia. But when it comes to the war at Jerusalem, there 45 says, "He shall come. The King of the North, the 60th, shall come to its end, and none shall help him." Now, what will happen to its allies?
Does anybody have any thoughts about that? What are going to happen to the allies? I think if the war expands and because it's gathering all nations surrounding Jerusalem, when it gets to that point,
yes.
If the United States gets into some huge trouble, and if there's no other Christian power that becomes the King of the North, like in the last statement that we just said, and it is the United States, I think that the allies will step back and let the United States lose.
Okay.
Yeah,
I see.
That's what I think. I'm not sure, but I think everybody's tired of America.
Yes, due to the turns of the war, the prophet says he doesn't or didn't know the turn of the war, how it will be. So as it is happening right now in Africa, Zambia and our neighboring country, Zimbabwe, sometimes back it was called the Rhodesia, then it was divided into two, and the Zambia was called Northern Rhodesia, and Zimbabwe was called Southern Rhodesia. But right now, it should be last week, the Zimbabwean president went to Russia and claimed for some weapons, saying Zambia has gotten some weapons from USA. So there is now a name between Zambia and Zimbabwe, just a neighboring country. So then South Africa, Brazil, China, they have come up with this, they call it BRICS. So it's more like the African countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, they are joining Russia, they are rising against France and America. So the way we have put it, it's like many nations are fed up with USA, besides claiming to be superpower. So when the war will be tense, many nations definitely will withdraw themselves. And America will be now alone trying to defend itself. As the pen of inspiration says, definitely none will help it and it will come to its end.
Amen. That is definitely a picture of what is likely to happen, because we know that Putin is very shrewd. Putin is very shrewd, and he's, people think, oh, he's being nice to the African countries. He's not making them pay back their loans. No, he's not. What he's doing is he's creating allegiance to Russia.
Yes.
And to totalitarian governments. He's creating that allegiance. He's bringing them all the totalitarian governments together. And when the time is right, he will call on these nations either not to get involved or help the U.S. or fight against them. He will call on their armies.
Yes,
Sister Judy, do you have anything? Thanks, Brother Calvin. That was very interesting.
Are you saying that Trump is going to turn against the U.S. too? Is that what you're saying?
No. We were talking about the African countries, BRICS, how he's saying, like, the Putin has said that Zambia was accepting weapons from the U.S. And so that created hostilities between Zambia and Zimbabwe, because Zimbabwe has sided with Russia. They're part of BRICS. Is that what you said, Brother Calvin?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Is Zimbabwe part of BRICS, Brother Calvin?
Definitely, North Africa, it has itself be part of BRICS. Now Zimbabwe, the president last week, and he was given even the food, the donation of food and other stuffs. So it's like Zimbabwe has lined with Russia. Even it's supposed to be Tuesday. Zambia and South Zimbabwe wanted to have the friendly international game, but our Zambian president, denied that because of the bone of contention, which is between Zambia and Zimbabwe. And just from the look of things, Zimbabwe has started receiving weapons from Russia. And Zambia, there is a place called Mwembeshi where Russia built its embassy sometimes back in 1970s, but our president commanded soldiers to destroy that embassy, so to speak. So the Russian embassy in Zambia, it was destroyed by Zambians. So that simply shows that indeed Zambia is detacting itself from Russia and aligning itself with the American powers. It should be last year in Parliament when the motion about which part should Zambia side. It was a critical discussion in the parliament, and it ended like that because some members of parliament voted to join Russia, others USA. So it is still a debating motion here in Zambia. But according to what is on the ground, it seems Zambia has lined with USA. That's why we can see now a line of demarcation or a clock being drawn between Zambia and Zimbabwe. And this simply shows that to us who are reading and understand these things, for sure we are on the verge of another event to take place.
Amen. And so, I believe that that's. Hold on just a second. Sorry, Brother Kelvin, I had to mute you, but I'll unmute you if you want to talk again. I believe that's how we're going to see all nations gather at Jerusalem. Either they're gathering physically or they're with one side or the other. They're supporting with arms, with whatever it is. Also, economic sanctions, that's something that we also have to consider. So that's why Russia is working so hard to tie everyone to them financially, because that was a war tactic used in previous wars. If a country ever entered into a clash against the United States, well, the United States would just do economic sanctions and withdraw all aid. And then that country would have to come back around and side with the United States. So that's exactly what Russia's doing. And he's actually trying to bankrupt the United States right now because he wants to get rid of the dollar as the world reserve currency. That's another major objective of BRICS. He is advocating the use of an alternate currency for the world to trade in. And he's gotten a lot of countries to join in there with him. Now, he doesn't have the westernized European countries, but that's why he's going into Africa. And he's trying to tie all those economies of the various different countries. Africa is like, is it the largest continent? I'm not sure, but I think it is. And it has a lot of different countries in it, a lot of different economies. So he's definitely deeply interested because if you put them all together, that's a massive army. If you get even half of those African countries and the population, that is a massive army. Putin is a very, very smart man, and we need to be very cautious and careful. But it doesn't even seem like sometimes the U.S. is scared of Russia. And maybe they should be because of what they're doing. They're trying to bankrupt us. And they also have China with its 1 million-man army. 1 million China. I mean, we had such a hard time in World War II with Asians, not China, but Japan. And it was just a very difficult war. After World War II, we still had the Korean War that extended some time after World War II. And if you look at the testimonies of American soldiers, they said, wow, it was just so hard because they would think that they would beat them and then there would just be another wave after wave. It seemed like they would just keep on coming. So the times are definitely, this World War II resumed is definitely going to be red hot. If this is just the beginning of it getting red hot, because nations are gathering at Jerusalem. They're starting to take sides. Iran is trying to get involved. It's saying that it will bomb Israel, and they have hit some targets inside that territory. We know that the Muslim countries are definitely hostile to Israel. The only reason they wouldn't attack Israel is because of the United States. But, I mean, Putin is courting them as well and supplies them with weapons. All the weapons that Hezbollah has definitely are coming from Russia or Iran, or both. So, and Palestine, they're being funded and supplied by those surrounding countries in Russia. So this is just part of us looking at current events and kind of taking a deep dive and looking closer at what the prophet says, and then taking, our worldly knowledge, looking at that area more intensely and saying, hey, these are the possibilities. Does anybody have any type of comments or questions?
So as far as the planting of his tabernacle, we're not sure where that's going to be yet. Is that right? Except we just know the broad location will be between the two seas.
Right. That map the last map that we looked at, it's excluding the areas that the prophet said. Remember, he said it cannot be in Jerusalem. It cannot be the kingdom. And then he says, but Moab, Edom, Ammon, and Palestine will escape out of his hand, the king of the north's hand. So if you look at these different ones, this is the ancient kingdoms of Ammon, Moab, and what was the other one I said? Edom. And then this is the territory of the kingdom.
Oh,
and
wow.
This green part is Palestine. This is the territory. When Brother Hada was speaking of Palestine, this is what it was. He never said state of Israel because it didn't exist yet. He only used Palestine.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so it can't be in these areas. And then secondly, it can't be in these areas. And we see that the Edom, Ammon, and keep on forgetting the third one. Edom, Ammon, and which one? What was the third one, brother?
Edom.
Yeah, Edom, Ammon, and Moab. Okay. It extends slightly to the east and goes more into Jordan, Ammon. But there's still this territory right here, and there's still a territory north that includes part of Syria, that includes Damascus, where it could possibly be, and of course this large area, the Suez Canal, of which Mount Sinai is a part. So we have to watch for any developments in these areas where the United States might claim that territory and then put like a military base or whatever the branch, the tabernacles of his palace may be. We don't know. But Brother Hada says it will hold the ecclesiastical world. He says possibly it will hold the let me get the exact words he said. That statement.
So they're trying to, I know that they want to attach, the prophet says, a religious name to it. That's why they're going there to build it. But now,
yeah, that's 14 track 89, paragraph 3. He said, investing the tabernacles of his palace with such sanctity can mean that it is to house the headquarters of the soon coming ecclesiastical world government, which we have also already considered. So he's saying it can. But Hada himself didn't say things for a certainty. He said we have to watch as it's happening, and even after it happens, that's when we'll know for a certainty where it's going to be, what it's going to be exactly.
Okay. So I'm glad you got that cleared up. My question is, since Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's in Jerusalem, right?
Yes, he recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. I think it was formerly Tel Aviv, where the embassy was.
Okay, and if God's throne is supposed to be set up there, because I remember reading a statement where it says he will perform Ezekiel 9 from there. What do you think will happen to that building that he moved there, or to make it their capital? Do you think God would have to destroy it first as his throne comes, or? I don't think the prophet said anything about that, but we know his throne is going to be there, and Satan always has a counterfeit. So he's going to try to put something there representing him. So both parties can't be there. We know, right?
I mean, I think what we know is that the prophet said you're going to be in houses you didn't build, and you're going to eat from vineyards you didn't plant. And that building could possibly be repurposed, to, for our use, for the kingdom's use. I mean, it's a real place. It's a real place that we're going to occupy with real buildings and real territory and real land and real infrastructure that we will use in the kingdom.
Wow.
Except for we'll also have heavenly infrastructure as well, too, which is going to be amazing. We're gonna board the chariot of the Lord, and that's going to take us from place to place to complete the loud cry and take us to the kingdom. Who are these that fly as doves to the windows?
Right. Amazing. Wow. Brother Waya fell off. I wanted to get his...
he had some good commentary.
Yeah, I wanted to, because both things can't be there. Both Satan's palace and, Jesus and Christ's throne can't be there.